Hello there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jordan Debano, and if you are looking for strategies, principles, and ways to empower your life and take complete control in creating your next level of success, you're in the right place. So, if you're wanting to see more of these videos, ensure that you click the subscribe button. Today, in this video, I'm going to be speaking about intuition. It was Steve Jobs, I've got the quote right here, who said, "Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary." It was also Albert Einstein who said, "The only real valuable thing is intuition." Now, I've got some other quotes that I want to mention later, but I picked those two to start today's video because it really is a profound orientation that we have in life. And I use that word orientation because I hear a lot of people out there calling intuition like a sense, um, or like a feeling. And of course, there's various ways in which we can feel intuition, or we can experience intuition, I should say. But in the ways that I've been trained by some really well-respected people in the world on how to actually practically call on intuition, the way they define it is orientation. Being in your intuitive awareness is an orientation. It's a choice that we make to actually receive intuitive awareness. And today we're going to be speaking about, the profound impact that following your intuition can have. One of my mentors, Dr. Demartini, said, when the voice on the inside becomes louder than the voices on the outside, you've begun to master your life and take complete control. And I believe that's so important, particularly in an age where there's so much information out there. People are very polarized on opinions. You're either over here or over here, right or left. You're either for or against this. And we're being swayed by a lot of ways to get about in the world, things to believe in, how to do particular things. There's workshops on literally every topic you can imagine these days. How to grow a business, how to write a song, write a book, how to be more masculine, how to be less masculine. Like it's nuts. It's literally nuts what's out there. And though there's been a powerful place for all this information, at least for myself, I've watched at times, you know, um, my own mind and my own heart, like getting really disconnected from both and watching it get filled with all of these ideas that aren't necessarily true for me. And when I say true for me, they weren't what my inner voice was telling me to do. And so the biggest assumption that we're going to start off with today is that, we choose to assume that our intuition knows what is best for us. It knows exactly where we will create the best possible outcomes in our life. What career, what type of business, the relationship we'd really love to be in, or all those kind of things, where we'd love to travel to. Like if we follow intuition, all of this, you know, begins to unfold for us. And I've got so many stories that I can share with you from my own life and clients that I've coached. It is just amazing what happens. But I want to start off with some misconceptions, because people have a lot of misconceptions about intuition that does create a sense of resistance. And the first one is, you know, it doesn't make sense. Well, I'm getting this nudge to go and do this, but it doesn't make sense. Now, this is a misconception that it needs to make sense. You, I'm going to quote one of my other teachers here, William Whitecloud. He said, I forget exactly what book it was. I believe it was The Secrets of Natural Success, but he said that your intuition is not meant to make sense. Okay, it's not meant to make sense because essentially you've got your intuition over here and you've got the opposite orientation, which is your ego. So your ego is the part of your psychology that teaches you, well, it doesn't teach you, but it shows you a reality, a frame of mind to be in that's familiar to you, that aligns with the beliefs you adopted as a kid, the stories you made up about yourself, and essentially, the wounds that we took on when we first came into the world. That is a totally different discussion on individuation and all that stuff. But if you've been following my journey for a while, you would have heard me speak about this on other podcast shows. But I'd recommend that you go and read William's book, The Secrets of Natural Success, because he talks about that in more detail. But for this video's sake, I want to stay on reference here. Because we have an ego that's job is to tell us what's happening around us, how it is, okay? Our intuition needs to talk to us in a different way. So we've got the known with our ego. So our intuition is like that higher awareness that's giving us things outside of what we know. Okay. Now, this also brings up a very interesting discussion where it's like our ego is what helps us stay safe and secure, and our intuition is what helps us expand in life. Now, if you think about expansion, in order for us to expand, we need to step out into uncharted territory. So whenever I get intuitive information that does not make sense and it doesn't make sense to my rational mind, I say this is the way it's meant to be because this is expansive information. If I don't understand it, it means, one, that I'm in a learning orientation here. I'm about to learn some new things. And two, okay, there's obviously some creations, some results and accomplishments out there that I'm probably not even aware of, the pathways to them or how good they're going to be. For example, if you know how to kick a soccer ball, all right, and you know that your way has gotten you, I don't know, a goal from the corner of the box. If you play soccer, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the 6-yard box, let's say. You know that you can score goals from there with your technique. But then if you start applying intuition and you start getting insights to start kicking the ball a different way, all you can assume is that you're going to start to score goals in a different fashions that'll probably surprise you. Okay, so this is what we want to choose to use whenever we get this thing in our mind where it's like, oh man, it doesn't make sense. I want to give you a real life example that I had when I did something that didn't make sense. It was just completely nuts how this worked out. So I was in London last year, and I'd planned to meet a friend of mine, a new friend that I'd made when I was staying over in London, to write a song with her in the park. So outside of podcasting, coaching, and all the other things I do, I write songs. And we'd planned. She didn't have a guitar, I had a guitar. Great, she's a great singer. Needed some help with constructing a song. So I said, I'll meet you at Hyde Park and we'll work together on it. So anyway, I was running really late, which is not like me, but on this day I was. So I was running from the train station to where I was going to meet her, and I was already about 30 minutes late. I was standing. Now, if you've been to Hyde Park and I think it's the train station close by that I was at was Green Park. I can't remember the exact name, but I think it was Green Park. Anyway, I was standing across the road from the big gate entrance, and she's there at the gates, and I'm on the other side of the road. And I was about to start shouting out because I could see she was walking off with one of her other friends. I was about to say, Emily, I'm here, right? And I started, but she couldn't hear me, which is that's also very rare because I've got a fairly booming voice when I get behind it. So anyway, she's left, and I get there, and by the time I cross, she's already so like far away that I can't see her down the road, and I'm thinking, far out. What do? I can't see her. Do I go looking for her? And I stopped because I was in my reactive, stressful orientation. So I knew I was in my ego. So I practiced what I preach here, and I stopped and I went, okay, got into my intuitive practice in the middle of the park and just asked, what are my next steps here? What are my next steps to serving my highest good? Those are one of the killer questions you can ask if you ever want to connect to your intuition. So I got present and I got to wait. So I was like, okay, I'm going to wait. And my phone was running out of battery. So I'm like, shit, all right. And to make matters worse, I couldn't get any data. I couldn't get any data. I hadn't put like a London SIM in. It was all over the shop. So I'm there, I'm waiting, I'm on like 4%, and I'm hating it. I'm hating it. I'm like, God, she's probably not going to want to write this song. I was really excited. She probably thinks I'm an idiot. I just wasted all this time getting out to Hyde Park because I wasn't staying at that point in London. I was on the other side. If you've been to London, you'll know how freaking big it is. So I was frustrated, but I'm like, no, my guidance was to wait. So I'll wait. Anyhow, 30 minutes go by. I go into the cafe in Hyde Park and ask, can I charge my phone? They say, no, you got to buy something. So I bought something, sat down, charged my phone. I'm going, okay, all right. Checking, have I got Wi-Fi here? No Wi-Fi. So, God, even now that I'm sitting down, having a coffee, I can't, I can't get in touch with her. So I checked in. I was like, all right, what are my next steps? What are my next steps? And I got to go for a walk down the road that she went. And I went, all right, cool. This is a wild goose chase. And I specifically got from my intuition, it was like, go for a walk and go inside a store. It was like you want to go inside a store. So it kind of gave me this shopping vibe. I'm like, I don't want to buy anything. I got the coffee. I didn't even want the coffee, but it was like, okay. So I take the walk and I go. Anyhow, I get to the end of this street and there's an Apple store. And I thought, all right, well, my phone's not even that charged. I'll go into Apple and I'll charge my phone even more. Maybe they've got some Wi-Fi. Long and behold, I walk in the Apple store. There's Emily and her friend like an hour later. And I'm looking at her and she's looking at me. She's laughing her head off. She goes, what a coincidence. I didn't say I was following my intuition to find you, but I knew it's like, of course. Of course it worked out like this. And see, like we have those experiences where it doesn't make sense, but if we follow it, it all works out. So we ended up writing the song. It was great, right? Had an awesome day at Hyde Park. So it doesn't need to make sense. That's just an assumption that you want to make. Now, the next thing that comes up for a lot of people is, how do I know if it's my intuition or my rational mind? Again, while I was in London, I was catching up with a lot of people there. I met up with a friend that I'd made in Portugal, and she was asking me, Jordan, how do I know it's not my ego or my rational mind and it's actually my intuition? And so there's many ways that you can differentiate the two. It's going to be slightly different for everyone, but I'm going to give you two that work for me. Okay, and I've already discussed one of them on my video that a couple days ago, right? So the first one is that anytime I get a very palpable feeling that's quite intense, like fear or excitement or like really joy, and it's really familiar, I know there's a high chance that's not my intuition because that's the known. I know those emotions all too well. And anytime I'm in my intuition and connecting to my higher consciousness, okay, I am not getting big pangs of fear or anxiety or even like happiness or joy. It's more subtle. Okay, so that's the first way I delineate. Am I feeling stuff that's quite intense? If it is, it's not my intuition. Okay, this is the ego having a crack here. Second, I pay attention to the voice. Okay, the voice. And if it's coming across like spoken word and in sentences and it's coming at me with some words, I know for sure that's my ego. Right? My intuition's more subtle than that. Again, subtlety versus the intensity. We want to go with subtlety. And we do that because again, the intensity is the known. When something's intense, we know it well. When something's more subtle, okay, there's an element of it being foreign. We need to learn about it. We want to lean into it. It has the potential to become more intense later, but it's through learning. That's the intuitive orientation. So that's how you can play with bouncing between ego and intuition with those. And of course, there's more that you can do, but that's a great starting point. Okay. So I want to read a quote from Musashi. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about the protein drink. Uh, Miyamoto Musashi. Now, he's got a book out called The Five Rings, a book of five rings. Now, this guy was one of Japan's like legendary samurais back in the day, like one of the greatest that ever lived, possibly the greatest, and no disrespect to him passing or anyone that's a samurai nut. I like my samurais. I'm actually writing a fiction story about some samurais at the moment, but I'm not a samurai nut where I'm fully immersed in all the history about it. But I did read this book, and it's a profound book on strategy, so sword strategy, the samurai way, and it very much applies to life. So I'd highly recommend that you read it. And a quote right at the end of the book that just it gave me the chills when I read it. I thought it was brilliant. Was what I call the void is where nothing exists. It is about things outside man's knowledge. By knowing what exists, you can know that which does not exist. That is the void. I think that is brilliant, and it's very relevant to what we're talking about today. So, you know, the void is where nothing exists, and it's outside of man's knowledge. We want to play in that void that Masashi's talking about. He constantly talks about the void in this book being his source of spirit when he's in a fight, right? And he talks about it as like it's where it's not what he doesn't understand, it's where spirit is, it's where stillness is, right? He doesn't say stillness, but the way he describes it's like this stillness. And he says it's where spirit and wisdom is, right? And this is what has fueled a lot of his victories over the years as a samurai. Obviously, he's dead now, but upon reflection, that's what he's talking about. And I just think that particularly that second bit of the quote, by knowing what exists, you can know that which does not exist. Okay, that's profound too, because if we know what exists in terms of our ego, we can know that our intuition can lead us to what doesn't exist yet in the world. Okay. And when he says that is the void, I just think that's so brilliant, because if we view the void as the holding dock where we can receive intuitive information, that's when we can start to create what doesn't yet exist in the world. Okay. So a premise that we go off for intuition is that magic, literal magic in your life, the unexpected shit lining up for you where success just happens like magic, it just occurs like magic, is living a life via intuition. You want to adopt that that assumption. Okay, if you are dead serious about living a life where you want to embrace that call, okay, we want to adopt the assumption, right, that hey, if I'm going to do this, there's some magic on the other side. I mean, we don't get attached to that outcome, but I know for me that I really lent into my intuition when I assumed that. Okay. Now, I want to give you the opposite of that, because if you're not assuming magic and leaning into your intuition, you're going to the opposite. And the opposite is safety and security is living life in the known. Okay. We want to separate the two. So many people that I train, so many people that I've worked with, right? They want to know. They want to know way too much about where they're going in their life, what they're creating, and they want to know too much when it's not necessary. And what happens, it cuts off that intuitive sense. It ends up feeding them information from their past where they end up reliving things that they've experienced. You ever heard people say things like, "Oh, I keep learning this same lesson. The universe is handing me this same lesson to learn over and over again." Usually when a breakup happens and it's with the person that they swore they'd never date again, just in a different form. We've all said this, right? But the reality is that that's an egoic creation. It's because we're choosing to know too much, which leads us to similar experiences in life. But when we're going, okay, I'm going into this world of magic where it's like I'm embracing my intuition, things come together in ways that you've never experienced before. And you're constantly like, how did that happen? Right? That, like that example I spoke about when I was in London. Another reference point that I want to give you for this and I think this is just a really really cool example. It's actually not from my world with my clients, but William Whitecloud spoke about this. One of his clients. Now, I don't know the story word for word, but the general the general consensus of it was he had a thing at like a bridge. We call it a bridge in our world, where it's like I want to go to Saudi Arabia. There was some trip and intuitive download for him to go to Saudi Arabia. And at that time, right now, it's much easier to get a visa for these kind of places. I don't know for a fact if it is in Saudi Arabia, but I gather with Dubai and everything being quite accessible that it's easier. But back then, apparently, it wasn't. And so, he tuned in, what are my next steps to getting over to Saudi Arabia? Because there's obviously this block with the visa and how to get a visa. And he got a bridge to go fishing at a particular part. I think it was in Australia at this particular location. Anyhow, he goes fishing. And turns out when he's on this damn fishing trip, he meets someone that's connected like crazy in Saudi Arabia. And just like that, he worked out a loophole to get a visa and he went off and had an amazing trip. And it's just like, it's so random, right? And you can get in that. That's just luck. But when the reference points stack up and it's that specific, and you know that, hey, this is the fishing trip I got to go do. I take the fishing trip and then I go and then this happens. It's like, holy shit. My rational mind couldn't have come up with that. So when we choose, it's like, man, I want to experience magic. This is what's possible, but we've got to go with the void, as Masashi said, the unknown, in order to capture it. Because again, a lot of people they'll get insights like that. I don't know if you're watching my videos, I'm assuming you're career driven and what have you, but goals that we have for our businesses and our careers, we can often see it, feel the emotions to it and go, great. And then what happens is we get a bunch of data from our rational mind, from other people, from books, telling us the way to go, the way to get there. And that is not intuition. That is not intuition, right? If you react to your goal by going, right, what do I think is the right move? Or, right, what does that person think? Because they've done it before. That's not intuition. That is the goal of being safe in life, being safe and living in the known, right? And so, this is what brings us to our second premise, which is why I want to give you this, because if you know this and then you experience it, you experience the ripple effects that following your intuition has. It's just impossible to not want to use it for everything like I do, essentially, right? So I'll give you another example on just like the ripple effect that comes from it, because it really is. When you follow your intuition, you think you're just going to get one thing handled, but usually there's a whole ripple effect that comes with it. So where I'm sitting right now in the Central Coast is Narara. It's a small suburb just outside Gosford. Last year, early last year, I got an intuitive bridge to come to house sit in Gosford. It made no sense. It's like, man, I don't know Gosford. I've heard of it, but what's in Gosford? It's like a small town, no one's there. But anyway, I listened to it and then I looked on the house sitting sites and I went, all right, well, I don't even know why I'm freaking house sitting. Why am I doing that? But I'm just like, I don't need to know why. I'm just going to do it. I found this house, right? 2 months in Narara, and I searched up where Narara was. I'm like, okay, just outside Gosford. Applied, and it was all good. Like, great conversation with the owner, and it's like, yep, you look after my two cats for 2 months. Come up. Now I was super nervous. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to like it. I don't know if I want to really do house sitting. I mean, I've done it before just for people I know, but I don't really know if this is the thing. But I went with it and I'm like, no, there's something there for me in Gosford. And I remember when I got up here, I walked in the house and I saw there was a piano there. beautiful views of where I'm sitting right now of the mountains. And the owner was showing me all of these different beaches that literally surround where I'm at, right? There's heaps. And I thought, oh, okay. And so it started off a little hairy. There wasn't real, I was getting used to it. I was a bit worried because literally a forest, a massive forest behind me. I've got a big phobia with snakes. And I thought, God, what if there's snakes in the house or around the house? Don't want to deal with that. So anyway, I'm hanging with a lot of like rational resistance, but essentially what started to unfold week by week was I began to receive all of these other intuitive bridges about my life. I got this thing to launch in my business, this program. I followed the exact process that I got from my intuition on how to launch it. Again, it made no sense. It was like run a trial class, invite a bunch of people via Messenger. That happened. Then I sold the program out. Then from that, it was like you're going to Spain on a European trip, and I did that. And it was like you're going to do another program and you're going to launch it at 1 a.m. in Mallorca. Made no sense. It's like in a place like Mallorca, you want to party, not launch a program. But that's what I did. Sold it out. It was just so there was that. I wrote like 6 songs here that all happened while I was here. It was crazy, right? And so I look at that, and oh, sorry, also, while this is all happening, I signed a book deal with a friend of mine who was creating a collaboration project for authors on the topic of intuition, and I was very much living it. But what was so fascinating. I was in my biggest creation of realizing how powerful intuition was when I signed that book deal. So anyway, you know, I there was so much of a ripple effect, and this brings me to my second premise that I want to give you, where it's that when you live via intuition, it's a learning orientation. You're constantly learning new things about your life, new things about what's possible, ways of achieving goals, what you want to create. It just becomes endless. And if you keep following it, man, does it get freaking awesome. Like, I don't want to go on about how I've used it. I'm sure you get the point, but it's a learning orientation. So, and this has changed my life because I remember when I was in COVID and I shut the agency, I always used to say things like, oh, I'm feeling stale. It's just mundane. Life's mundane. It's constantly, yeah, right. And that was a symptom. I didn't know it at the time, but that was a symptom of living life in the known, walking around going, I need to know. But ever since, I've dropped that, man, every day, I'm not kidding, every day, there's just, it's life. It's like, this is a learning opportunity. I'm learning every day. Now, again, that sounds crazy, and I don't want to give you the impression that it's like, yeah, man, every day is just rocking. It's not what I'm talking about. Every day, there's something fresh that's coming in to further my creations and what I'm building. But it's got that element of freshness, and it's surprising, and it's like life just hasn't been stale for a very long time. And so that's another reason to go with intuition, because what you'll find is you don't need things out there to fill you up. This thing about fulfillment and having a purpose, it goes away. Trust me, like what's my passion? You don't ask that when you're living via intuition, because every day is just an adventure. It's like, man, what is going to happen today? What am I going to create? Where am I getting guided to go? So this is why when we hear quotes from Albert Einstein, when they're saying things, intuition is really the only valuable thing, and Steve Jobs and Masashi saying how he used it for war, we really want to take note and go, well, why am I paying attention to what everyone else is saying? Why am I buying, the 10 steps to building a business? Again, I don't want to knock that, because there is a place like if you get an intuitive bridge to go and learn something and buy the 10 steps to, build an e-com store. I mean, do it, like, because there's some gold there and what have you. I mean, I can vouch for that. I've had a few of those bridges, but if you're doing it because you just want to know and feel safer, I mean, you can still be successful. My old business, it was all about that, and it worked. But man, you know you're always going to have that thing of like, oh, yeah, life, it's hard, slow, right? And it doesn't have to be like that. And so this is why I really wanted to do this episode today because, man, you get on this intuition stuff. It's incredible. Anyway, we're going to end it there. So, guys, thank you for tuning in. I hope that this has helped and given you a really cool action step and a some inspiration to go and lean into your own intuition because magic is very much possible when you do. If you've enjoyed today's video, ensure that you subscribe and share this video with a friend that needs it. As I say, I've been on a massive journey over the last few years, working out the different ways to tap into personal power and tackle all of these topics like fulfillment and purpose. You know, I was in a real dark place, all kinds of crazy things that were going on in my life, and I just got obsessed. I'm like, man, I want to learn this stuff. So I'm still here, and you know, this is my channel where I get to pay it forward to you guys for things that have really helped me. So if someone's in a dark place and you know that this could help them, share the video on with them. And yeah, I'm sure they'll get a lot out of it. Anyway, guys, have a good rest of your day and we will chat next time.